The world, we are often told, is moving away from physical media. Physical media is either dying, dead, or, at best, settling into a niche consumer category where oddball collectors will still be focusing on filling their shelves. It's me, I am the oddball collector filling their shelves. There are, of course, arguments for keeping physical media around. For instance, nostalgia has led to a boom in vinyl record sales in the music sector. The movie sector, on the other hand, has seen the return of first-release brand-new VHS tapes, which, I'll be honest, is not only a trend I did not see coming, it's literally an idea I used to laugh at. But here we are. Anyway, this video essay is not about the nostalgia argument. There's also the technical arguments that get into compression algorithms, megabytes per second, reduced color profiles. Ultimately, the argument goes, 4K resolution video coming off of a 4K Blu-ray is a vastly different experience than 4K being streamed from a streaming service, which is something you can actually observe for yourself, provided you can get your hands on a 4K Blu-ray player. They are actually pretty cheap right now. But this is not a video about the technical arguments either. What I want to talk to you about instead is the consumer rights argument. Because a world where streaming is our most common source of entertainment can seem like a panacea. So little money at a time for so many options. But as our entertainment economy leans more and more heavily on streaming first or streaming only, we as consumers of media are losing what we had for a brief window from VHS and Betamax through 4K Blu-ray. The ability as a viewer to have real choice, and the ability for artists to have a sense of true permanence. If I had $1 for every time I bought digital media from a website that said it was mine to keep and that I could download it any time, then I might actually be able to afford to replace a movie or two that I can no longer download. Which means that it's happened roughly 20 times, not much, but enough that I'm a little bit gun-shy whenever somebody comes calling with a promise that I can buy a movie or a song once, digitally, and it's mine to keep. Look, I've been an Apple user since 1984, and the large number of movies and TV shows I own only on the iTunes Store sometimes keeps me up at night. Why, yes, that is the sort of thing that keeps me up at night. Doesn't it keep everyone up at night? I lost an entire library worth of music when eMusic suddenly decided you own it forever and can download it any time meant only as long as the label is still actively selling the music with us. And I still don't know how many ultraviolet copies of movies I've lost after the service, which was supposed to be the movie industry's answer to why can't I copy my own DVDs to play on my phone, closed down in early 2019. And then there are all the promising reinventing media startups I pumped money into as a customer over the years, only to watch them close down and take any and all of my purchases with them. I'm not saying that to be like, oh, poor pitiful me, I've wasted so much money, but I'm saying it more to acknowledge the point that if you've bought digital media of any kind over the last decade, you've more than likely lost digital media over the last decade. If not, you are inordinately lucky, or you haven't bought that much. And I would argue that as far as the studios and distributors are concerned, that's a feature and not a bug.
Are those morons out there?
Yeah. I can take chicken fertilizer instead of doing for caviar.
I can make them eat dog food and they'll think it's steak. Sure, I got them like this.
You know what the public's like. A cage full of guinea pigs.
Because the history of the media industry has always been one of limiting access. I've covered this before in my video on movie novelizations as the original home video, but from the beginning of film in America, studios were not pleased with the idea of anybody being able to watch any movie they wanted at home at any time. So as technologies have arisen that have made movies and television more accessible, they've sought ways to limit the audience's ability to access them. They used to recall and destroy 35mm prints with such regularity that many of the classic movies we can still enjoy today from the era of the birth of film are only available to us because of early pirates who struck illegal prints, or because of small theaters on the end of the touring circuit who couldn't be bothered to haul film cans back to the railroad station to send them home. Studios like Universal, Warner Brothers, the ones who have been a part of the industry from the start, all have titles in their history that are now lost forever, because somebody felt it was better to let a film literally burn to ashes than take the chance that somebody might one day be able to watch it without paying a leasing fee.
This community means about as much to me as a festering bowl of dog snot. Do you think I care about the pea-brained yokels of this town? If you took their combined IQ and multiplied it by 100, you might have enough intelligence to tie your shoe. If you didn't drool all over yourself first.
When smaller gauge film and projectors started to find its way into the hands of hobbyists, studios reacted not by embracing the home movie market, but by tossing it literal scraps. That is to say, highlight compilations that were less about being able to enjoy the movie when you wanted, and more about whetting your appetite so that you would be more eager to rush to the theater if it ever got a re-release. Some movies did find their way onto 16mm, 8mm, and Super 8 film, but the legitimate prints were mostly the occasional short, and, like I said, clips compilations. Again, the market was largely served by early pirates who would duplicate a film to the smaller film stock whenever they had the opportunity. But by the time the home market became a real thing at that level, at least film studios had found a reason to keep old movies hanging around. Television. First, the B-movie and Poverty Row film studios like Monogram started increasing their profit margins by selling copies of their old movies on to the TV market. And then the larger studios got in on the game with time-limited licensing agreements that allowed them to control when, how long, and how often television stations would be able to show their films. You could watch a movie at home, but only with commercial interruptions, on the TV station's schedule, and only for as long as the studio was willing to let the TV station air it. So things were still controlled by the studios. It's not like there was an easy way to make a copy of a movie off of the television broadcast.
America, stop rushing your life away just to catch a TV show. Get a Sony Betamax video recorder and automatically videotape that show while you're doing something else and watch it anytime you want. Sony Betamax. It could change your whole way of life.
Oh, whoops. Betamax and then VHS were suddenly there, and the whole idea being sold to consumers was that you could, in fact, make a copy of your favorite television programming and not have to ever be limited by television schedules ever again. They had to sell on that idea because movie studios weren't quick to embrace the idea of sending complete copies of their movies home with the audience. The first ever legitimately released pre-recorded videocassettes hit the market 3 years after the launch of the first systems, a handful of classic movies released by Time Life in packaging designed to fit into a library of leather-bound books.
They're gorgeously packaged, too, in handsome bindings with gold embossing. The wonderful thing about great programs is that, unlike anything that you tape off commercial television, great programs are never out of date. Each time you enjoy them, you'll learn something new.
Studios didn't like people being able to own a copy of their movies, but at a certain point, The genie was out of the bottle. The studios tried to control it as much as they could, keeping price tags high for official home videos, while at the same time actively suing the manufacturers of video technology to try to keep them from selling people the ability to record television at home. They also tried to sue the rental market out of existence long before Blockbuster hit the scene by charging that renting a videotape was, in fact, copyright violation. But when both the home recording and the video rental lawsuits were decided against the studios, VCR sales skyrocketed and stores started to stock VHS movies by the fistful. The studios had to lean into the new market. It still wasn't an embrace, more of a tenuous handshake. Things got worse when DVDs hit big. The studios loved the money coming in, especially on their television production ends, where, for the first time, it was feasible for consumers to own entire series without worrying about buying an endless number of bulky tapes.
And now you can join in the worldwide Star Trek 25th Anniversary celebration with the original, uncut Star Trek episodes on video cassette. Yours for just $4.95 for your introductory 2 episodes. Here's the series that set the standard by which all science fiction is measured.
But what they hated was discs containing perfect digital copies of their shows. Discs that you could, theoretically, copy onto your computer and have a perfect duplicate that you could move on to any other format that might come along. Which is why we entered into a nightmare of digital rights management technologies.
That's a fascinating little gadget. It's going to replace CDs soon, so I'll have to buy the White Album again.
If you can rip a Blu-ray, then turn the resulting high-definition file into any new format that comes along, you don't have to worry about buying new copies of the movie. Suddenly, the last copy of A Hard Day's Night that you bought becomes the last copy of A Hard Day's Night that you'll ever have to buy. The flood of DVDs and Blu-rays that hit the market at the format's respective peaks all represent one of the greatest times for media access in the history of the entertainment industry. Back catalogs were mined by studios who could make a quick buck, and indie and rare releases could find niche publishers who would put them out. And that's before you get into the manufacture-on-demand boom that included the Warner Archive putting out burned DVD-Rs of movies that made no economic sense to manufacture at scale. And at first, the digital world seemed to be gearing up to make access even greater. Since the 1970s, futurists had been promising a world where the fusion of computers and television would grant us access to every movie and every TV show whenever we wanted it. And here came the streaming services, led by Netflix, who had originally built its brand on shipping millions of DVDs through the mail, and they seemed to be promising exactly the same thing. Pay a low monthly fee to just 1, maybe 2, possibly 3 companies, and get the broadest library of entertainment any audience had ever dreamed of. Yeah, about that. Remember everything I said about how easy it is to lose the purchases you've made on digital? Well, streaming subscriptions take a drawback of digital media sales and turn it into a feature of the business model. Your access only lasts as long as you make a monthly payment. No matter how much you've paid them, when the payments stop, you lose everything. And not only that, but as the studios quickly made sure, you can't even rely on accessing your favorite shows and movies, even if you keep forking over the money. For the first few years of the streaming industry, studios like Paramount and Warner Brothers leveraged their libraries specifically to keep any one streamer from becoming a dominant force. As long as Paramount was able to shift their Star Trek series and movies between services, they could keep audiences with money for just one streamer, jumping from company to company to keep their access to their favorite franchise. This is not speculation. This strategy from the studios has been an open secret since around 2008. And more recently, with the proliferation of single studio streaming services, the picture has gotten even darker. Now the studios have direct say over what you can and cannot watch of theirs, and as the recent merger between Warner Brothers and Discovery has shown, what studios want you to watch can ultimately come down to the whims and prejudices of a few privileged executives.
Good night, you miserable slob.
There are a lot of trained seals. I toss them a dead fish and they'll flap their flippers.
Well, just a closer walk with thee.
Physical media isn't perfect. Here's a great example. This is not a Laserdisc. Laserdiscs lately have taken on a bit of a cult status with their LP-sized physical presence and artwork. This is a CED, a product that actually had a decent user base, but which I didn't even know existed until I watched a Tecmone video on the subject just about a year or so ago. Inside of this cartridge, Jane Fonda's workout is stored magnetically on an actual vinyl disc. It's the same basic technology that recorded movies to videotape, but on a durable vinyl disc that doesn't lose fidelity over time. The problem with this is, good luck finding a working CED player. I went looking, and the best price I could find for a user-refurbished player was $400. And there weren't many options other than that, period. The same thing is happening now with Laserdisc players. They're an obsolete technology, so they're slowly falling out of sight as the equipment suffers normal wear and tear, and no new equipment is being manufactured to replace it. Technology moves on. You won't always be able to find equipment to play a physical piece of media when you want to. But as long as a piece of physical media exists, the possibility of it being played and the content stored inside of it recovered is still there.
They're gorgeously packaged, too.
Digital purchase sources can take an item out of your library because of contractual problems, failing servers, or bankruptcy. Streaming services can remove a movie or a television show from your library with a click of a button, and with so much being stored digital first and digital only, erasing a show or movie from existence altogether is just as easy. But physical media is a thing that exists and occupies space. The VHS copies of the original Star Wars trilogy, before the special editions, still exist and can still be played. And the copies that I just purchased on 4K Blu-ray will exist even if, for some unfathomable reason, Disney decides to remove them from Disney Plus tomorrow. Because the studios have devised ways to take away your legal claim to your digital media. They've devised ways to give themselves control over libraries where they can give and take as they see fit without the customer having any recourse. But one thing they haven't devised yet is a way to legally enter your home and take away the discs that you bought. I'm not saying that streaming needs to end, nor am I saying that discs are the only way people should be able to see movies. I love streaming services. I subscribe to... Wow, I'm not sure of the exact number. I should probably fix that. But a model of streaming first and especially streaming only are not just matters of personal taste for how you access your favorite entertainment. They threaten the rights of entertainment consumers that were fought hard for and won in the 1980s, and they hand control right back to the studios that tried to keep their own products out of consumers' hands for most of the film industry's existence.
Wait till they get a load of me.
Batman on video cassette for just $19.99. Call now and this Batman pin is yours free.
30 years old? I remember seeing this in theaters.
Guess you're old. Who cares?
From 1947 to 1961, Groucho Marx hosted You Bet Your Life. It's a lot of fun to watch still, but as a historical document, the show is fascinating. We're talking about an improvisational comedy game show hosted by one of the greatest minds of American humor that spans some of the earliest years of the medium's history. And virtually all of it still exists, but, and this is crucial, it was almost lost. Not in some long-ago warehouse fire. Not in some accidental transfer of kinescopes to the wrong address. In 1973, Groucho was contacted by the holders of the You Bet Your Life Masters, and he was told that if he didn't want them, they were marked for destruction because they needed the shelf space. If not for Groucho's grandson, who happened to be visiting at the time and who convinced the semi-retired comedian to accept the reels, over 500 boxes of television history gold would have been lost. Studios like to act like they're doing everything possible to preserve their holdings, regardless of how accessible they make them. But it really doesn't take long to learn that's just not always the case. The entertainment business is a business, and businessmen often have wildly varying ideas concerning their priorities. Today's cultural linchpin is tomorrow's waste of shelf space. Thanks for checking out the video. This might be a tough question this time around, but if you could own any movie or any television series that you've never bought a copy of, what would it be? Drop into the comments and let me know, and our secret Cool Kids Club code word this time around will be Zounds. It's a great old word. Until next time, watch like it means something.
257 257 1 2 3 4 5 6 7